Celeste had long believed that every brushstroke held a secret. As an art instructor at the community center's evening program, she dedicated her days and nights to guiding people in unveiling their hidden passions. She was approaching her 30th birthday, and though some might have felt stifled by such daily routines, Celeste never tired of the subtle transformations that occurred around the paint splattered easels. Every smile that curved at the corner of someone's lips when they finally grasped a new technique was worth hours of preparing lesson plans and cleaning stray flecks of acrylic off the tiled floors. Despite the swirling motion of students who came and went, each with their own unique stories, Celeste had grown accustomed to normalcy in her classroom until the appearance of a quiet, unassuming newcomer challenged every sensible fiber of her being. Shortly into the fall session, a tall young man named Luca enrolled in her advanced painting class, a man of few words who always sat in the far corner of the room. While many students greeted Celeste and chatted freely about their day jobs or aspirations, Luca's greetings were curt and his replies measured in single syllables. At first, Celeste assumed he was merely an introvert, feeling his way around a new learning environment. However, it quickly became apparent that his reticence ran deeper than common bashfulness. It showed in the way he held his paintbrush shakily at first, as though it were a foreign instrument. It was evident in the way he shifted uncomfortably whenever classmates gathered around his canvas, offering opinions on color or form. Celeste, unwilling to pry, offered gentle guidance, yet something intangible within Luca sparked her curiosity. Behind those dark eyes lurked a hidden depth that begged exploration. Celeste tried small, simple invasions into Luca's zone of silence to coax him out. She would kneel quietly by his station, glancing sideways at the developing painting. She'd smile and throw in a soft question: how does the color palette feel to you? Or, what made you choose these shapes? Often he'd barely respond, but Celeste noticed how his brushstrokes grew more deliberate the more she was near. She trusted that an artist's soul could speak in countless ways that had nothing to do with words. Perhaps that was the route to understanding Luca. His first few paintings were hesitant, featuring dull shades melted into one another, an exploration of geometry rather than emotional narrative. But the more classes he attended, the more she noticed subtle shifts in his style. The swirl and curvature of brushstrokes grew bolder, and the color palette brightened minutely each week. Awkward silhouettes became fluid lines. Foggy, indistinct shapes began to resolve into brilliant landscapes bursting with texture. Intrigued by the progression, Celeste sensed that Luca's quiet manner might hide a powerful wellspring of imagination and emotion. She felt oddly compelled to guide it into the light, not simply as his instructor, but as someone who respected the transformative power of art. It was on a rainy Monday evening, beneath the dim glow of the overhead lamps, that Celeste first recognized the inexplicable longing in Luca's work. The assignment had been to paint the essence of home, using any media or style. While some students gravitated toward rustic cottages or childhood memories, Luca's canvas displayed a riot of color that evoked a sense of warmth, security, and, most poignantly, yearning. The stroke of the brush was fearless, carving vibrant ribbons of gold and soft halos of lavender. At the heart of the canvas stood a single figure, silhouetted against an abstract swirl of color. The figure's posture was one of searching, arms gently outstretched, as though hoping to touch the intangible. Celeste found her gaze lingering on the painting for far longer than she intended, compelled by something she could not quite put into words. It was more than artistic merit. It felt strangely personal, as if the painting called out to her specifically. Moved by the painting, Celeste walked around the aisles of easels until she stood behind Luca once again. She softly cleared her throat, not wanting to startle him. "It's breathtaking," she said gently. Her remark was met with the usual half nod, half acknowledgement, but his shoulders relaxed a fraction, and he dipped his brush in a fresh hue before continuing the piece. Aware that other students required her guidance, Celeste moved on, reminding herself that the best approach with Luca was gentle patience. She yearned to uncover the layers of meaning in his art, and some part of her dared to hope that he might trust her enough to open up. But it wasn't just a teacher's curiosity that drove Celeste. She found herself lingering by the corner of the room more than she should, drawn not merely by what Luca was painting, but by who he was behind that silent demeanor. She told herself it was her responsibility to help a talented student find his voice, yet she couldn't deny the fluttering sensation that rippled through her whenever she saw the fierce concentration etched across his face. She questioned her motives. Luca was, after all, her student. Even if he was an adult pursuing further education in the arts, she couldn't ignore the ethical obligations and the complexities that might arise if she let herself indulge in personal admiration. Still, her heart murmured quietly that something extraordinary was stirring. One night, after class had finished and the other students had packed up their equipment, Celeste lingered to wipe down tables and stow away supplies. Luca remained behind, fiddling with brushes as though trying to prolong the moment he had to leave. The air between them crackled with unspoken words. Celeste gathered the courage to ask the question that had been hovering for weeks. "Would you like to talk about your painting?" Luca's eyes flickered with hesitation. He shrugged, glancing at the half-finished canvas he'd started working on that night. It was a portrait of sorts, though the features were not fully defined. The lines exuded tenderness, and the color choices, emerald greens bursting into gentle rose-tinted whites, signaled some kind of awakening. Celeste's breath caught. She had never seen love expressed so subtly, yet so powerfully on a two-dimensional surface. Luca set his brush down, carefully resting it on the easel's small tray. "I don't really talk much," he admitted, sharing his longest statement since he had enrolled. "But sometimes, when I paint, I feel like I can actually say something. I used to think I just needed to be alone with my art, but now—" His voice trailed off, and he rubbed the back of his neck uncomfortably. "I've never been part of a real class before. Didn't realize how inspiring it could be." Though he didn't say it outright, Celeste felt a subtle warmth in his words. She offered him a gentle smile, heart thrumming at the faint but tangible bridge of connection between them. In the weeks that followed, Celeste kept noticing the themes of longing and affection in Luca's paintings grow stronger. Though he was still painfully shy, each piece radiated a vibrant energy and a hidden intensity, as though the images were love letters without a specific recipient, or perhaps with one, though unspoken. She caught him once or twice looking in her direction when he thought she wasn't aware. A flush crept up her cheeks at the possibility that all this color might be directed at her. Self-doubt melded with a flicker of excitement in the pit of her stomach. She wondered if she was imagining the quietly charged atmosphere, or if it was truly there. The tension between them felt like the hush before a storm, fraught with potential. One late afternoon, as the leaves outside turned auburn and gold, Celeste held an open studio session for students to come in and work on personal projects. Only a handful arrived, and among them was Luca. The day was quiet enough that Celeste could roam from student to student, offering pointers. She found herself anchoring near Luca, marveling at the bright fields of color he was conjuring on the canvas. This time, the painting depicted a solitary figure standing before a towering tree, with branches shaped like flames. Petals or leaves seemed to swirl around the figure, reminiscent of cherry blossoms caught in a spring wind. She admired the purposeful layering of paint, where each stroke held the memory of the one preceding it. His painting carried a sense of devotion, as if the figure gazed upon the tree with unconditional reverence. While Celeste stood by, Luca reached for a shade of crimson so deep it was nearly purple. He swirled it onto a corner of the palette, then used it for the heart of the tree trunk. "That's a bold choice," Celeste observed. "I like it." Luca paused, drawing in a slow breath. His eyes never left the canvas, but his voice came, subdued yet resolute. I was worried it might be too bold. Something in his tone hinted that he wasn't referring solely to color. Celeste's heart thudded in her chest. She yearned to ease his discomfort, yet couldn't deny her own feelings. Their connection, though unspoken, was too palpable to ignore. A few days later, an exhibit was scheduled at the community center, intended to showcase the works of instructors and promising students. Celeste handpicked 6 of Luca's paintings to display, recalling how each of them had progressed from tentative strokes to luminous declarations. Luca appeared surprised when he saw his pieces among the others, each hung precisely in the best lit corridor by Celeste's careful arrangement. Though he didn't say a word, gratitude shone in his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curved upward in a shy, genuine smile. A smile that electrified Celeste more than she cared to admit. The opening night of the exhibit was a bustling affair, featuring local art enthusiasts and supportive families seeking glimpses of new talent. Celeste felt a mild flutter as she circulated around discussing her own pieces. Out of the corner of her eye, she glimpsed Luca standing near his council of paintings, hands clasped in front of him, his expression quietly proud. It was the first time she had seen him attempting conversation with others, albeit softly and in brief sentences. She felt her chest tighten with pride and something deeper, akin to affection for this student who had journeyed so far in such a short time. In the midst of the chatter, Celeste found a rare moment of calm near Luca's display. She sidled up to him, offering a playful nudge of her shoulder. "Nervous?" she asked. He nodded. His gaze flitted over the vibrant scenes, the swirling golds, the sunrise colors, and the single figure painted over and over again in various forms. Behind them stood the new painting of the lone figure facing the radiant tree. Celeste recognized it from the open studio session. As she scanned the painting, she noticed something she hadn't before: the faint outline of a woman's silhouette at the far edge of the scene, subtly integrated into the rhythmic patterns of color. She blinked, trying to discern its details. Most viewers might overlook the figure entirely, but once she saw it, she couldn't unsee it. The graceful lines suggested long hair flowing in a breeze, a gentle tilt of the head, almost attentively watching from a distance. Beneath the overhead lighting, Luca shifted on his feet. "It's new," he explained, as though reading her thoughts. "I added that part after our last class." She swallowed, training her senses on the painting and trying to maintain her composure. "It's beautiful," Celeste managed, her voice just above a whisper. "Thank you," came Luca's subdued reply, and his cheeks warmed with a hint of pink. She forced herself to let the moment drift away, not wanting to risk overstepping boundaries in such a public setting. Yet her resolve faltered a few nights later, after she stayed behind in the classroom to prepare for an upcoming workshop. The cool hush of the room reminded her of the solace art had always provided her in her own times of uncertainty. She picked up a brush and began to experiment on a stray piece of canvas, swirling pastel blues and pinks, letting her frustrations and revelations pour out in color. Almost an hour passed before she realized she was no longer alone. Luca stood by the doorframe, silent as ever. She startled, nearly dropping her brush. "You paint so freely," he remarked, his hushed tone full of earnest wonder. Celeste flushed, awkwardly, drawing back from her half-finished piece. "It's nothing, just messing around," she said, setting her brush down. She noticed how Luca's gaze skipped from the canvas to her face. For a moment she felt laid bare, as though he could see every swirl of her own desires, fears, and carefully guarded longing. The tension was disorienting, but it also felt honest, a moment of wordless connection in a realm they both understood. They stood quietly for a few heartbeats, the hush of the night settling in around them. Then Luca stepped in, judged the distance, and tentatively touched her hand. It was a gesture executed with the same delicacy as he approached his painting, tentative, yet sincere. "I need to say something," he whispered, "but I don't have the words. I just know it feels right here." He tapped at his chest, the place where an artist's spirit glowed with unspoken truths. Her breath caught in her throat. She understood. Every painting of his was an unvoiced declaration. Every swirl of crimson, every warm glimmer of gold spoke volumes. She felt a closeness that transcended standard student teacher rapport. Sometimes, Celeste began uncertainly, colors speak better than words. Luca's gaze was unwavering, and he nodded. She realized then that the swirl of emotions coursing through her wasn't mere gratitude for a talented pupil. It was something deeper, something that made her pulse race when he was near. She reminded herself of her responsibilities, the ethics of their positions. Yet the heart is rarely a rational vessel. It yearns against all sense of propriety. They stood side by side, gazing at her makeshift painting on the easel. Then Luca's hand slid away from hers, and he dipped into a small jar of paint. He guided the brush across her canvas, embellishing it with a thin ribbon of bright magenta, unexpected and bold, but surprisingly cohesive with her color scheme. Celeste inhaled sharply, the collaboration sealing an unvoiced promise between them. The swirl of color he added seemed to whisper, "I see you, I care." In the following days, Celeste was torn. The rational part of her insisted she should maintain professional boundaries and gently redirect Luca's affections. Yet, each time they locked eyes, the memory of his hand on hers tugged at her heart. They remained subdued in class, not wanting to draw attention, exchanging fleeting glances. Celeste found herself waiting for the session to end, the other students to filter out, so that she could share a moment with Luca in the hush of the classroom. Whispers of conversation passed between them, each admitting small fragments of their life stories. She learned Luca had come from a family that seldom spoke. Emotions were expressed through distance and stoicism, leaving him starved for heartfelt connection. She, in turn, told him how she was once a timid teenager, finding her voice only by painting her bedroom walls with pastel dreamscapes, dreaming of the day she could teach others to convey what lay within. Finally, on a Thursday evening, when the winter wind rattled the windows outside, Celeste saw that Luca's easel was turned away from the rest of the class, prepared in a corner where no one else ventured. After the session ended and the bustling students disappeared into the hallway, she found him waiting there, painting fervently. He was finishing a portrait. This time, there was no elongated swirl of shapes or impressionistic scene. The figure was presented plainly, a woman in a room lit by rare golden light. The details, though faintly stylized, outlined Celeste's features distinctly. Her hair parted neatly, the slight curve of a neckline. The painting was tender, reverent, capturing a sense of soul that seemed far beyond a fleeting crush, like a devotion inked into color. Celeste approached, stunned by the intimacy of what she was observing. Her eyes traced the brushstrokes forming her portrait. The shading around the eyes was luminous, as though brimming with warmth. His palette still had smudges of rose, gold, and that same magenta she had come to associate with Luca's fearless leaps of emotion. He paused, turning to her with a tentative smile. There was no question in his gaze. It was an offering, a confession. She could hear her own pulse roaring in her ears. "It's lovely," she murmured. She reached out, then changed her mind and kept her hands curling at her sides. "I'm flattered, and I'm not sure what I should say," she continued, forcing the words to emerge. He watched her calmly, setting his brush down gently. "I know we come from different worlds," he said softly. "I've been wrestling with it. All I know is that without you, I never would have found the courage to put color to canvas like this. I'm not expecting anything. I wanted you to have this." His eyes shimmered with shy determination. "It's my way of saying thank you, of letting you see how I feel. Art's all I have to express it." Stan's tears threatened to spill from Celeste's eyes as she realized how fully she had fallen under Luca's spell of quiet dedication. Everything about him, from his timid manner to the quietly blazing soul that emerged in his pieces, called out to her. She wrestled with the notion of how precariously they balanced on the line between teacher and student, but recognized that in the adult realm of evening classes, The complexities were not quite the same as a strict academic environment. She realized she respected him as a peer in artistry, not just a pupil. The sensation roaring in her heart told her she wanted to accept this gift for everything it represented. She turned toward him, her voice quavering. "Thank you for showing me what's in your heart. For what it's worth, you made me feel amazing." She paused to steady herself. "I can't say I'm not confused, but if it's all right with you, maybe we can talk about this over coffee or even just keep painting together. This is too special to ignore." A glint of relief sparked in Luca's eyes. He nodded once, swallowing hard, as though a tremendous weight had lifted from his shoulders. They ended the night by tidying up the classroom, the hush of the late hour blanketing them in an intimate calm. Celeste carefully wrapped the framed portrait in protective paper, as though cradling a rare treasure. They walked out together beneath the fluorescent hallway lights, pausing in the foyer by a mural of sunflowers that Celeste had helped her students paint the previous spring. Silently, they turned to each other, uncertain if they should speak more or even extend a casual goodbye. Finally, Luca reached for her hand again, and this time she let him hold it without reservation. Perhaps they would stay up late discussing color theory, or the vulnerability required to let someone see the hidden corners of one's creativity. Maybe they would share a quiet booth in the coffee shop across the street, exploring subtle mutual confessions, sketching their aspirations on napkins. Whatever path they took, Celeste felt convinced that something real and meaningful lay ahead. She sensed a future in the hush within her studio walls, in the swirl of paint conjured by Luca's talented hands, and in the uncharted spaces of affection that neither had quite known how to articulate with words. Together, their brushstrokes formed a language that resonated more truthfully than any spoken statement could. Silence, so formidable in Luca's life, found a vibrant channel through color and imagination, while Celeste found that her carefully crafted fortress of professionalism could expand to allow an honest connection. In that shared moment, standing hand in hand under flickering lights, they accepted each other fully, whether a romance blossomed in full or proceeded gently over time. Their devotion to one another was etched across countless canvases, each hue proclaiming that sometimes the most profound declarations of love bloom from the steady hush of unspoken words. The color, it seemed, spoke with unequivocal clarity, bridging two spirits who dared to believe in the transformative power of art and in each other.